All praise to the Most High. We're going to start with First Maccabees chapter 9, and these chapters, once you start getting into the end of First Maccabees, and sometime or somewhere in the middle as well, but you start getting into these long chapters. So we're going to try to get through 3 tonight. We may only get through 2, but we're going to start by talking about the death of Judas Maccabeus and how his brothers step up after Judas Maccabeus dies, specifically Jonathan and Simon. All right. So with that, happy Passover, as I said a while ago, and we'll go ahead and get into it. First Maccabees chapter 9. Furthermore, when Demetrius heard that Nicanor and his hosts were slain in battle, that's what we read about last week, the day of the destruction of Nicanor, he sent Bacchides and Alcimus into the land of Judea the second time, and with them the chief strength of his host. And that's what we have. It's a recurring theme among the Greeks, is that they send bigger and bigger armies to Judea to attack Jerusalem, who went forth by the way that leadeth to Galgala. Galgala, if I'm not mistaken, is the same as Gilgal. I may be, like I said, I may be mistaken, but it said, and pitched their tents before Masaloth, which is in Arbela. After they had won it, they slew much people. All right, so I know I've been saying for the longest time that, I don't have any maps of the area of at this time, because obviously the names are different, but I found one, and it may not even be particularly accurate, but it's the best quality map that I could find of this time, and we'll talk about the accuracy of it here in a second once we get into it. But here's the map of the area at that time. All right, so as you can see here, there's this Gilgal, that Gilgal, and the real approximate area of Gilgal from the Old Testament is down here. All right. So that's why I say it may not be entirely accurate, because there's 3 Gilgals on here, and I only ever read of one in the scriptures. All right. So let's kind of blow this up a little bit. Let's see if we see what we just mentioned. Like I said, Galgala, I believe, is the same as Gilgal, but not 100% sure on that. It said they pitched in Arbela. What was the other name that it called Arbela? Masaloth. Yeah, I don't even think that's on here. No, here it goes. Arbela up here. There's Arbela. So the Greeks came by way of the east, as if they're making their way to cross the Jordan down here to Gilgal. All right. And they took Arbela. So if we need that, we'll come back to it. Let's get back to the scriptures. Also, the first month of the 152nd year, they encamped before Jerusalem, right? So they made their way on down to Jerusalem, from whence they removed and went to Berea with 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen. Now Judas had pitched his tents at Eliasa and 3,000 chosen men with him. All right. So this is 20,000 footmen and 2,000 horsemen, and Judas has 3,000 men with him. All right. Let's see if we see Berea. You see how it all gets clustered here in Judea is because that's the region that is mentioned the most in this time. Do we even see Berea on here? I don't so far. No, I don't see Berea. Obviously, Jerusalem is right here. You see it in big bold type. Yeah, I'm not seeing Berea. So, here it is, right here in the middle. So just north of Jerusalem, maybe even a bit northwest, but mostly just north of Jerusalem is Berea. All right. I didn't see Eliasa on there either. Is it around? Oh, yes, to the west. Directly to the west of Berea is Eleazar. Yeah, this stuff is hard to see with all them names clustered up there. Please forgive me. All right, so now we have an understanding of where the people are at. Who seeing the multitude of the other army to he so great were so afraid. Whereupon many conveyed themselves out of the host, insomuch as abode of them no more but 800 men. You see that right there? So that would have been what? 2,200 ended up leaving out of fear. When Judas therefore saw that his host split away, and that the battle pressed upon him, he was sore troubled in mind, and much distressed, for that he had no time to gather them together, right? He didn't have time to do his speeches like he usually does, and call upon the Lord the way that he does before a battle, generally, and that's why he was kind of troubled in the battle. His spirit wasn't feeling right, all right? Nevertheless, unto them that remained, he said, let us arise and go up against our enemies, if peradventure we may be able to fight with them. But they dehorted, saying, we shall never be able. Let us now rather save our lives, and hereafter we will return with our brethren and fight against them, for we are but few. Then Judas said, God forbid that I should do this thing, and flee away from them. If our time be come, let us die manfully for our brethren, and let us not stain our honor. So even amongst the 800, you had some dispute and say, look, I'm not going to stay here. We need to go and regroup. We need to retreat. And Judas was like, no. Judas Maccabeus said, no, we shouldn't retreat. We shouldn't stain our honor like this, saying they defeated us in battle, they made us run away. We should rather die for our brethren, for our Lord, than to become cowards. All right. With that, the host of Maccabees removed out of their tents and stood over against them, their horsemen being divided into two troops, and their slingers and archers going before the host, and they that marched in the forward were all mighty men. Right, so even the people on the front lines were all mighty men of these Greeks. As for Bacchides, he was in the right wing, so the host drew near on the two parts and sounded their trumpets. They also of Judas' side, even they sounded their trumpets also, so that the earth shook at the noise of the armies, and the battle continued from morning till night, all day. And before they went into battle, they blew the trumpets. Everybody around could hear it. They shook the earth with the sound of their trumpets. All right. And was fighting all day. Now, when Judas perceived that Bacchides and the strength of his army were on the right side, he took with him all the hardy men who discomfited the right wing and pursued them unto the Mount Azotus. Azotus is a Greek way of saying Ashdod. All right. He said the Mount Azotus, however. So I don't think that would be in a different place. But Ashdod is all the way down here. As you can see here. Yeah, I don't know if the Mount Azotus would be in another place, but surely, but that is a coast and not a mountain, so they are already here in the mountainous region, so perhaps it's somewhere in here. But let's get back to it. But when they of the left wing saw that they of the right wing were discomforted, they followed upon Judas and those that were with him hard at the heels from behind. So now they're fighting a battle on two fronts. All right. They pursued this one group, this one battalion, and now they got another battalion on their heels. Right. Whereupon there was a sore battle, insomuch as many were slain on both parts. Judas also was killed, and the remnant fled. Then Jonathan and Simon took Judas their brother and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers in Modin. Surely they got Modin on this map. Jerusalem. Modin is got to be close to Jerusalem, just based on everything that. Come on now, don't tell me they ain't got Modin on this map. That's the whole starting point. I'm not seeing it nowhere. Dang. Don't tell me they ain't got Modin on the map. They got Masphah and Anathoth. They got 3 Gilgals on, got 1 Modin. Dang, that's crazy. Oh, here it is, up here. I'm tripping. It's northwest of Eleazar. There's Modin. So that's where the Maccabees came from. That's where the Hasmonean family came from, was from Modin. All right. So that's where they buried Judas. Moreover, they bewailed him, and all Israel made great lamentation for him and mourned many days, saying, how is the valiant man fallen that delivered Israel? As for the other things concerning Judas and his wars, and the noble acts which he did, and his greatness, they are not written, for they were very many. You see that right there. So there would have been no way to record every mighty act and every valiant thing that Judas Maccabeus did, because he just rolled like that. He did stuff like that every day. All right. It's almost reminiscent of how John writes at the end of the Gospel of John, how you could never, the earth couldn't contain the books that were written, that would be written to explain all of Christ's life, right? To explain all the wonderful deeds that he did, to explain all the miracles, right? So, everybody was mourning because they knew that Judas was a valiant and noble man. All right. And now he was gone. All right, somebody had to step up and fill those shoes. Now, after the death of Judas, the wicked began to put forth their heads in all the coasts of Israel, and there arose up all such as wrought iniquity. You see that right there? So they said, look, the righteous man's gone, we can do wickedness, and nobody's going to stop us. In those days also was there a very great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. You see that right there? So how soon do the average person follow after wickedness during hard times? All right. And obviously we know, according to Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28, when the people are in sin, the land is not going to prosper. All right. So that's why there was a famine in the first place. It's because the people fell to sin. The people fell to sin. Then there's a famine. And now more people following after them because they want to go, enjoy the spoils of the Greeks. They want to go and enjoy the luxuries of the heathen. All right. Then Maccabeus chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. You see that right there? So Maccabeus, that wicked man whose battle ended up killing Judas Maccabeus, he set up overseers in the land of Israel. Overseers and governors, all sorts of things. And they made inquiry and search for Judas's friends, and brought them unto Maccabeus, who took vengeance of them and used them despitefully. Again, we see how the Greeks would torture the righteous Israelites. All right. So was there a great affliction in Israel? The light whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. All right. You see that right there. So this is even worse than when Epiphanes took over. Then, it was Antiochus. Even worse than when Antiochus took over. All right. For this cause, all Judas' friends came together and said unto Jonathan, since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies and Maccabees, and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. They said, look, somebody got to step up and fill Judas' shoes. All right. Now, therefore, we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight our battles. They said, look, we know that you was rolling with Judas for a long time. We know that you're not Judas Maccabeus, but, you're a close second. You're a mighty man as well. You're a man of valor. You're a valiant man. So we want you to be our captain now. Upon this, Jonathan took the governance upon him at that time and rose up instead of his brother Judas. Notice that Jonathan wasn't, trying to politic his way to the top, like a Menelaus or like a Simon the Benjamite that we read about during the days of Onias the high priest. All right. The people came to Jonathan and said, look, you gotta lead us. All right. But when Maccabeus got knowledge thereof, he sought for to slay him. Right. He said, oh, there's another one of them. I got to kill him. All right. Then Jonathan and Simon, his brother, and all that were with him, perceiving that, fled into the wilderness of Tekoa. And Tekoa would be the same as Tekoa, I'm presuming. All right. So that's your wilderness of Tekoa, south of Jerusalem. All right. And pitched their tents by the water of the pool Asphar, which when Maccabeus understood, he came near to Jordan with all his host upon the Sabbath day. You see that? The Greeks always taking cheap shots, always stooping to the lowest common denominator to get the upper hand. Now, Jonathan had sent his brother John, a captain of the people, to pray his friends, the Nabathites, that they might leave with them their carriage, which was much. All right, so the Nabathites, I'm fairly certain, are the Nabateans. Or maybe it's a city named Naboth somewhere, but I'm fairly certain it's the same as the Nabateans. Nabateans would be like down to the east, or rather south to the east, I should say. The Nabathites. Like I said, perhaps there's a city on here named Naboth. That's what I'm looking for now. I don't think so, though. Yeah, I'm fairly certain he's talking about the Nabateans here, which is Ishmael. Come from Ishmael's son, one of Ishmael's sons. All right. This is Johanan. This is Johanan that you read about in 1 Maccabees chapter 2. This is Johanan. That they might leave with them their carriage, which was much. But the children of Jambri came out of Medaba and took John and all that he had and went their way with it. After this came word to Jonathan and Simon, his brother, that the children of Jambri made a great marriage and were bringing the bride from Nadabatha with a great train, as being the daughter of one of the great princes of Canaan. All right, so the children of Jambri. And I don't think Jambri is a city on here. I believe whenever I read this here recently. Oh, here's Medeba, by the way. The children of Jambri, I'm pretty sure, are of Ammon. Are of the land of Ammon. I may be mistaken, but I think that's what I have read. But you don't read about the children of Jambri anywhere else in the scriptures, as far as I can tell. And that's the thing about this, and that's why I haven't been looking into the maps of this time, because you don't read about this stuff anywhere but the history of the Maccabees. All right. Some of it you do, some of it you don't, though. Therefore, they remembered John, their brother, and went up and hid themselves under the covert of the mountain, right? They're going to rescue John, who is a hostage, all right? Where they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, there was much ado and great carriage. And the bridegroom came forth, and his friends and brethren, to meet them with drums and instruments of music and many weapons. Then Jonathan and they that were with him rose up against them from the place where they lay in ambush, and made a slaughter of them in such sort, as many fell down dead. And the remnant fled into the mountain, and they took all their spoils. Thus was the marriage turned into mourning, and the noise of their melody into lamentation. So when they had avenged fully the blood of their brother, they turned again to the marsh of Jordan. You see that right there? So they killed him. When they took John hostage, they ended up killing him. So that's why John and Simon went hard on him, or went hard on them, all right, at that marriage. Now, when Maccabeus heard hereof, he came on the Sabbath day into the banks of Jordan with a great power. Then Jonathan said to his company, "Let us go up now and fight for our lives, for it standeth not with us today as in time past." He said, look, we ain't in a good place like we have been, all right? We're fighting, we're on the upswing again, so to speak, all right? For behold, the battle is before us and behind us, and the water of Jordan on this side and that side, the marsh likewise and wood, neither is there place for us to turn aside. He said, look, we can't flee, we have to fight. Wherefore, cry ye now unto heaven, that ye may be delivered from the hand of your enemies. With that, they joined battle, and Jonathan stretched forth his hand to smite Maccabeus, but he turned back from him, right? So Maccabeus had to flee. Then Jonathan and they that were with him leapt into Jordan, and swam over unto the other bank, howbeit they passed not over Jordan unto them. Right, so Maccabeus, they didn't chase him, all right? So there were slain of Maccabeus' side that day about 1,000 men. All right, so they killed about 1,000 men, jumped back over to Jordan, Maccabeus fled his own way. Afterward returned Maccabeus to Jerusalem and repaired the strong cities in Judea, the fort in Jericho, and Emmaus, and Beth-horon, and Bethel, and Thamnatha, Pharathoni, and Tophon. These did he strengthen with high walls, with gates, and with bars. You see that right there? So now you have Maccabeus taking Jerusalem and the surrounding cities. All right. Let's see if we see any that was mentioned here. Parathon up here. I think that's the only one we see that was mentioned. Oh yeah, Jericho, of course. Beth Horon and Bethel. Bethel is up here. Jericho's right here. So all these northern forces. I thought maybe Beth Horon would be up here too somewhere. No, I don't see Beth Horon or Emmaus, but all these northern forces right here. These are what, and of course Bethel. These are, oh yeah, lower Beth Horon over here. Oh dang, there's a Tham. So all the way up here apparently. Thamnatha. So all these northern forces of north of Jerusalem, these are what Maccabeus is fortifying. All right. And in them he set a garrison, that they might work malice upon Israel. You see that right there? Work their wicked ways, work their hatred. He fortified also the city of Bethsura and Gezerah and the tower, and put forces in them and provision of victuals. All right. So what did you say? Bethsura? Yeah, Bethsura. Where's Bethsura down here on the south? So they also fortified some cities to the south. All right. Besides, he took the chief men's sons, and the country for hostages, and put them into the tower at Jerusalem to be kept. All right. So we've read about these towers in weeks past, and there was these towers that they built. It's not like, it's not like just some sort of like lighthouse. All right. The towers that they're building are similar to skyscrapers of today. There are hundreds of people in these towers. All right. Working and living. All right. They're like the skyscrapers of today. All right. Except they're more fortified. They're stronger. All right. All right, so let's read 54. Moreover, in the 153rd year in the second month, Alcimus commanded that the wall of the inner court of the sanctuary should be pulled down. He pulled down also the works of the prophets. You see that right there? So they're defiling the temple again. All right. And as he began to pull down, even at that time was Alcimus plagued, and his enterprises hindered, for his mouth was stopped, and he was taken with a palsy, so that he could no more speak anything nor give order concerning his house. You see that right there? So as soon as he started messing with the temple, all right, that's when God struck him with a palsy. All right, he became mute. He couldn't speak. With a palsy, your limbs wither up. All right, so he probably ended up with like a hand like this. If you ever see somebody with like a hand that's like curled in like that, that's called a palsy. All right. And I know we've heard of cerebral palsy, like your whole body basically shuts down. All right. So Alcimus died at that time with great torment. You see that right there? He died of that palsy because he wasn't taking the temple seriously. All right. He must not have heard of Heliodorus. All right. Must not have heard of what happened to Antiochus Epiphanes, where God plagued him with a loathsome disease. All right. Now, when Maccabeus saw that Alcimus was dead, he returned to the king, whereupon the land of Judea was in rest 2 years. Right. So Maccabeus said, "Look, I'm getting out of here." He saw what happened to Alcimus. He said, "I'm getting out of here for 2 years." It was probably more along the lines of, or at least what he officially said. "Oh, I gotta tell the king what happened to Alcimus," but no, he was like, "Oh, let's see what happened to Alcimus. I'm getting out of here." All right. Then all the ungodly men held a council, saying, "Behold, Jonathan and his company are at ease, and dwell without care. Now, therefore, we will bring Maccabeus hither, who shall take them all in one night." So they went and consulted with him. Then removed he, and came with a great host, and sent letters privily to his adherents in Judea, that they should take Jonathan and those that were with him. Howbeit they could not, because their counsel was known unto them. Right. So Jonathan had some men on the inside. He saw what was going on. He was not dumb. He was not stupid. All right. If you don't take anything else from this, know that Jonathan was not some stupid guy. All right. He was very intelligent, very wise. All right. Wherefore they took of the men of the country that were authors of that mischief, about 50 persons, and slew them. Right. They killed the traitors. All right. Afterward, Jonathan and Simon and they that were with him got them away to Beth Basi, which is in the wilderness, and they repaired the decays thereof and made it strong. All right. So again, I'm not sure about Beth Basi. They said it was in the wilderness though. So wilderness is like down here. I don't know if it would be as far south as Arad. This is the pool of Ashfar, though, what we were just reading earlier. Yeah, I'm not seeing Beth Basi or Beth Basi rather. Yeah, I'm not seeing it, unfortunately. But the wilderness is to the south of Jerusalem. All right. Which thing Maccabeus knew, he gathered together all his host and sent word to them that were of Judea. Then went he and laid siege unto Beth Basi, and they fought against it a long season and made engines of war. But Jonathan left his brother Simon in the city and went forth himself into the country, and with a certain number went he forth, and he smote Odenarchus and his brethren and the children of Phasaron in their tent. And when he began to smite them and came up with his forces, Simon and his company went out of the city and burned up the engines of war. You see that right there? So again, Simon was a wise man, a counselor. And I meant to say Jonathan there, but Simon himself was a wise man and a counselor as well. Jonathan was a wise man. All right. He knew how to strategically fight. Judas Maccabeus, not saying he didn't ever do anything strategically, because of course he did, but Judas Maccabeus was more about fighting with the strength of the Lord. Jonathan is more about using wisdom in these cases. He said, look, y'all stay here and fight while we'll go around and attack them from behind. When they turn around to us, then y'all come out of the city and attack them as well. So then we'll get them on two fronts. All right. Jonathan was very strategic in how he did things. All right. And fought against Maccabeus, who was discomfited by them, and they afflicted him sore, for his counsel and travail was in vain. All the scheming that Maccabeus did was in vain. Wherefore he was very wroth at the wicked men that gave him counsel to come into the country, inasmuch as he slew many of them, and purposed to return into his own country. So Maccabeus said, again, I'm getting out of here. Whereof when Jonathan had knowledge, he sent ambassadors unto him to the end he should make peace with him and deliver them the prisoners. Which thing he accepted, and did according to his demands, and sware unto him that he would never do him harm all the days of his life. When therefore he had restored unto him the prisoners that he had taken aforetime out of the land of Judea, he returned and went his way into his own land. Neither came he any more into their borders. You see that right there? So Jonathan, through his wisdom and knowledge, ended up causing the enemy to leave the land without necessarily killing him. All right. He made peace with him. When therefore he had restored unto him the oh yeah, I just read verse 72. Thus the sword ceased from Israel, but Jonathan dwelt at Maccabeus and began to govern the people, and he destroyed the ungodly men out of Israel. All right. So let's see if I can see where Maccabeus is. Said he dwelt in Maccabeus. I'm not seeing it. Oh yeah, Maccabeus might be the same as Michmash up here. Maccabeus might be the same as Michmash, north of Jerusalem, somewhat northeast. Let's go back. Next chapter. At this rate, it seems like we're only going to be able to get two in with how long these chapters are, but we'll go ahead and read the second one. In the 160th year, Alexander, the son of Antiochus, named Epiphanes, went up and took Ptolemais, for the people had received him by means whereof he reigned there. Now when King Demetrius heard thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host and went forth against him to fight. So again, this like Middle Ages type, Game of Thrones type stuff going on with the Greeks. Like I said, very reminiscent of the wicked northern kingdom when you're reading in Kings. All these different sects, these different factions of Greeks warring against each other. All right, one will get an authority over here. The other one will get an authority over here. So now they want to conquer each other. And it's going to get worse as we keep reading. All right. Now, when King Demetrius heard hereof or thereof, he gathered together an exceeding great host and went forth against him to fight. Moreover, Demetrius sent letters unto Jonathan with loving words, so as he magnified him. For said he, let us first make peace with him before he join with Alexander against us. You see that right there? So now these Greeks, these different factions of the Greeks, are wanting to use the righteous Jews as a defense, as an ally against their Greek enemies. All right. Else he will remember all the evils that we have done against him and against his brethren and his people. Wherefore he gave him authority to gather together a host and to provide weapons that he might aid him in battle. He commanded also that the hostages that were in the tower should be delivered him. Then came Jonathan to Jerusalem and read the letters in the audience of all the people and of them that were in the tower, who were so afraid when they heard that the king had given him authority to gather together in hosts. Because remember, this is still wicked Israelites ruling in these areas. But now Jonathan just got approval from the king to run up in there and take back the people that were kidnapped. All right. Whereupon they of the tower delivered their hostages unto Jonathan, and he delivered them unto their parents. You see that right there? So the hostages that they took was kids. All right. So he rescued these children and took them back to their parents. This done, Jonathan settled himself in Jerusalem and began to build and repair the city. And he commanded the workmen to build the walls and the Mount Zion and about with square stones for fortification. And they did so. They said, look, we need to fortify the city in righteousness so that the wicked cannot run up in here anymore. All right. Then the strangers that were in the fortresses which Maccabeus had built fled away, insomuch as every man left his place and went into his own country. Only at Bethsura certain of those that had forsaken the law and the commandments remained still, for it was their place of refuge in Bethsura. So all the places that Maccabeus had built and fortified up with evil men, Jonathan came through and took them back. All right. All except for Bethsura down here to the south. So as we were reading, I believe this is what was it? Maccabeus is the same as Michmash, I believe. So he began taking back all this area that Maccabeus had taken over. He started to take this back. All right, and he made his way down to Jerusalem upon that letter of Demetrius, and he fortified Jerusalem. So all the people that was in Jerusalem that were wicked and running from the righteous rulership had to flee down south to Bethsur. All right. Let's keep going. Now, when King Alexander had heard what promises Demetrius had sent unto Jonathan, when also it was told him of the battles and noble acts which he and his brethren had done, and of the pains that they had endured, he said, shall we find such another man? Now, therefore, we will make him our friend and confederate. You see that right there? So now, Jonathan is like the pretty girl in prom season, right? Where everybody wants to, get with him. Everybody wants to be his ally. Both sides said, look, okay, I like the way that these righteous Jews move, and I like the way that Jonathan's moving. We got to get an alliance with him. All right. He said, shall we find such another man? Now, therefore, we will make him our friend and confederate. Upon this, he wrote a letter and sent it unto him according to these words, saying, King Alexander, to his brother, notice the verbiage here, to his brother, Jonathan, sendeth greeting. He said, look, we're bros. We have heard of thee that thou art a man of great power and meet to be our friend. He said, look, you meet all the qualifications to be our friend. Wherefore now this day we ordain thee to be the high priest of thy nation. You see that right there? The high priest. And to be called the king's friend. And therewithal he sent him a purple robe and a crown of gold. And require thee to take our part and keep friendship with us. Look, so they're giving him gifts. So in the 7th month of the 160th year, at the Feast of Tabernacles, Jonathan put on the holy robe and gathered together forces and provided much armor. Whereof, when Demetrius heard, he was very sorry and said, what have we done that Alexander had prevented us in making amity with the Jews to strengthen himself? Demetrius has a past of trying to kill Jonathan and his brothers. So of course, Jonathan would rather ally with Alexander. He said, I might be able to trust Alexander. I know I can't trust Demetrius. I might be able to trust Alexander as far as an alliance is concerned. Maybe. All right. But of course, he's accepting the gifts. Wore it on the feast day, decked out. All right. I also will write unto them words of encouragement and promise them dignities and gifts that I may have their aid. He sent unto them therefore to this effect, King Demetrius unto the people of the Jews sendeth greeting, whereas ye have kept covenants with us and continued in our friendship, not joining yourself with our enemies, we have heard hereof and are glad. So he is a very loaded letter. All right. This is a very loaded message he's sending them here. Wherefore now continue ye still to be faithful unto us, and we will well recompense you for the things ye do in our behalf, and will grant you many immunities and give you rewards. And now do I free you, and for your sake I release all the Jews from tributes and from customs of salt and from crown taxes. They said, look, you got you can get the 501c3, right? You can be tax free. And from that which appertaineth unto me to receive for the third part, or the seed, and the half of the fruit of the trees, I release it from this day forth, so that they shall not be taken of the land of Judea, nor of the 3 governments which are added thereunto out of the country of Samaria and Galilee, from this day forth forevermore. All right. So, again, when I said oh, it's just showing the 3 countries. Good. Because I seen another map that point out a timeline that was just way off. These 3 countries, Judea, Samaria, and Galilee, were added during the days of Jonathan. All right, because before it was just Judea. All right, it was just Judea, but now all these countries are being added unto Jonathan. Right, so they're going to kick out all the evil and the wicked and the heathen. All right, and just fill these areas with Israelites. That's how you end up having a Judite Christ in Galilee. This is not technically Judea up here. All right, and that's why I said in Matthew 4, it talks about Galilee of Naphtali and Zebulun, right? Because those were the tribes that are supposed to be up there, but it got filled with Judites because Jonathan in his days got these three countries back. All right. From this day forth forevermore, let Jerusalem also be holy and free, with the borders thereof, both from tents and tributes. Right, so he said, look, we're gonna make you tax exempt, and as for the tower which is at Jerusalem, I yield up authority over it, and give the high priest that he may sit in it such men as he shall choose to keep it. Right, so even Demetrius here, he's saying, look, we recognize you, Jonathan, to be high priest. All right, moreover, I freely set at liberty every one of the Jews that were carried captives out of the land of Judea into any part of my kingdom, and I will that all my officers remit the tributes even of their cattle. They said, look, I will that he said, look, I'm gonna free all the Jews that were wherever sent in slavery, and I'm going to make them tax exempt as well. All right. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and new moons and solemn days, and the 3 days before the feast, and the 3 days after the feast, shall be all of immunity and freedom for all the Jews in my realm. You see that right there? So he said, look, y'all can even have all the days off. Y'all can have 3 days off beforehand, 3 days off after every feast day. All right. Also, no man shall have authority to meddle with or to molest any of them in any matter. All right. So he said, look, if anybody does come against y'all just let me know, because I'll come after them. I will further that there be enrolled among the king's forces about 30,000 men of the Jews, unto whom pay shall be given, as belongeth to all the king's forces. He said, look, but I want y'all in my army. All right. And I'll pay you and everything, but I want you in my army. And of them some shall be placed in the king's strongholds, of whom also some shall be set over the affairs of the kingdom, which are of trust. He said, I'll even make some of my counselors Jews. All right. I will make Jews some of my counselors, I should say. And I will that their overseers and governors be of themselves, and that they live after their own laws, even as the king hath commanded in the land of Judea. He said, look, and all the dispersed, all the diaspora of the Jews, everywhere they're at, I'll make sure that they can keep the commandments. All right. And concerning the 3 governments that are added to Judea from the country of Samaria, let them be joined with Judea, that they may be reckoned to be under one, nor bound to obey other authority than the high priest. Right. So that's how you had Christ living in Galilee at the time of this would have been like 150, 200 years later. All right. As for Ptolemaeus and the land pertaining thereto, I give it as a free gift to the sanctuary at Jerusalem for the necessary expenses of the sanctuary. All right. And Ptolemaeus, I don't know if we see Ptolemaeus on here, but Ptolemaeus sounds like it would be closer to Ptolemy in Egypt. I may be tripping on that, but I think that only makes sense. Yeah, not seeing it anywhere in the north. Maybe somewhere else. Yeah, because I'm not seeing it anywhere on here. All right. Let's get back. Moreover, I give every year 15,000 shekels of silver out of the king's accounts from the places appertaining. And all the overplus, which the officers paid not, as in former time, from henceforth shall be given towards the works of the temple. He said, look, I'm going to pay to help you build a temple. All right. And beside this, the 5,000 shekels of silver, which they took from the uses of the temple out of the accounts year by year, even those things shall be released, because they appertain to the priest that minister. He said right there. So he's getting real holy roller at this point. He said, look, I know that we got money that pertains to the temple. I'm going to give all that back. And whosoever they be that flee into the temple at Jerusalem, or be within the liberties hereof, being indebted unto the king, or for any other matter, let them be at liberty, and all that they have in my realm. So this is actually like an ancient version of the Somerset doctrine, which, if you don't know what that is, that's something that the British implemented. I believe it's called the Somerset Doctrine. I may have this backwards, but it's a situation where if any slave from the colonies, this was done in the 1700s, in the mid 1700s, this was declared that if any slave from the colonies that Britain owned, if they made it to Britain, they would be free. All right, because some ancient statute in Scotland declared that Britain was free or whatever the case may be. But that's what you see here, that if any slave or any fugitive ran to Jerusalem, they'd be set free. All right. For the building also and repairing of the works of the sanctuary, expenses shall be given of the king's accounts. Yea, and for the building of the walls of Jerusalem and the fortifying thereof round about, expenses shall be given out of the king's accounts, as also for the building of the walls in Judea. Right. So that's what he said. He's reiterating how the king's going to pay for all this restoration that needs to be done. All right. All this renovation that needs to be done. Now, when Jonathan and the people heard these words, they gave no credit unto them, nor received them, because they remembered the great evil that he had done in Israel, for he had afflicted them very sore. You see that right there? So again, he said, we know we can't trust Demetrius. All this is too much. He's lying. We can't trust him. All right. But with Alexander they were well pleased, because he was the first that entreated of true peace with them, and they were confederate with him always. You see that right there? So he said, look, but we might can trust Alexander, so we're gonna go with Alexander in this Alexander versus Demetrius conflict. All right. Then gathered King Alexander great forces and camped over against Demetrius. And after the two kings had joined battle, Demetrius' host fled, but Alexander followed after him and prevailed against them. And he continued the battle very sore until the sun went down. And that day was Demetrius slain. You see that right there. So there's probably some Jews in that army of Alexander there that allied with him. All right. Afterward, Alexander sent ambassadors to Ptolemy, king of Egypt, with a message to this effect: for as much as I am come again to my realm, and am set in the throne of my progenitors, and have gotten the dominion, and overthrown Demetrius, and recovered our country, for after I had joined battle with him, both he and his host was discomfited by us, so that we sit in the throne of his kingdom. Right. Walked up in his castle, walked up set on his throne. Right. Now, therefore, let us make a league of amity together, and give me now thy daughter to wife, and I will be thy son-in-law, and will give both thee and her according to thy dignity. Right. So Alexander's like, look, let's make peace. And one of the ways that two kingdoms, two countries would ally themselves in peace back in the day is by the king giving his daughter to this other king. Right. And that's how you'd show the allegiance, because now we're more than just allies, we're family. Right. Then Ptolemy, the king, gave answer, saying, happy be the day wherein thou didst return into the land of thy fathers, and sattest in the throne of their kingdom. And now will I do to thee as thou hast written. Meet me, therefore, at Ptolemais, that we may see one another, for I will marry my daughter to thee according to thy desire. So Ptolemy went out of Egypt with his daughter Cleopatra, and they came unto Ptolemais in the 160 and second year. 60 means 60. So this is where the first time in the scripture that we read of Cleopatra. All right, Cleopatra was a Greek woman. Cleopatra was not a black woman. Cleopatra was a Greek woman at the and probably inbred as well, but at the very least she was mixed. All right, she was not black. She was a descendant of Ptolemy, who was a Greek. All right. But this Cleopatra, because there was many Cleopatras, it was like a title. It was a name, but it was like, there's a whole bunch of different Cleopatras. All right. So this Cleopatra married Alexander. And, there was alliance formed between Egypt and where Alexander is in Greece. Where King Alexander, meeting him, he gave unto him his daughter Cleopatra and celebrated her marriage at Ptolemais with great glory, as the manner of kings is. Now, King Alexander had written unto Jonathan that he should come and meet him, who thereupon went honorably to Ptolemais, where he met the two kings, and gave them and their friends silver and gold, and many presents, and found favor in their sight. Right? So, he showed up to the wedding, give gifts, This is, Jonathan is, in alliance with this Greek partnership that's going on here. With this Greek family, if you want to call it that. All right. Verse 61. At that time, certain pestilent fellows of Israel, men of a wicked life, assembled themselves against him to accuse him, but the king would not hear them. You see that right there? So you still had wicked Israel up to their wicked tactics. They know it worked in the past where they could just slander the men of God, where they could slander Judas Maccabeus and his brothers. But this time the Greeks weren't even hearing it, because they met Jonathan. They could, write him a letter personally. They could, talk to him personally, see what's going on. They don't have to take these wicked men's word for it. All right. Yea, more than that, the king commanded to take off his garments and clothe them in purple. And they did so. Right. So they said, look, we're going to give you new clothes. We're going to buy you a new fit, all of that. And he made him sit by himself and said unto his princes, go with him into the midst of the city and make proclamation that no man complain against him of any matter, and that no man trouble him for any manner of cause. You see that right there? So they were like, hey, throw a parade for Jonathan. Let everybody know that this is the high priest in Judea, and don't mess with them. All right. Now, when his accusers saw that he was honored according to the proclamation and clothed in purple, they fled away. You see that right there? They couldn't do nothing. They had to leave. So the king honored him and wrote him among his chief friends, and made him a duke and partaker of his dominion. Afterward, Jonathan returned to Jerusalem with peace and gladness, of course, because he met them with peace. So he went back with peace and with gladness. He just had fun at a wedding. A wedding's like a party. And especially back then, they would have a wedding for like weeks. All right, in some cases, and especially with a royal wedding like this, he was probably over there for a few weeks. All right. Furthermore, in the 165th year came Demetrius, son of Demetrius, out of Crete into the land of his fathers. So again, you see these different Greeks stand up like, oh, I'm of a royal lineage. Just about everybody would try to be king back then. All right. Whereof, when King Alexander heard tell, he was right sorry and returned into Antioch. He said, look, I got to go. I got to leave Ptolemais, which Ptolemais is clearly, when reading this, it's I can assume, I may be wrong here, but I can assume that Ptolemais is in Egypt. All right. In Greek ruled Egypt, they named the city Ptolemais. And returned to Antioch being in Greece. Then Demetrius made Apollonius, the governor of Celesyria, his general, who gathered together a great host, and camped in Jamnia, and sent unto Jonathan the high priest, saying, Thou alone lifted up thyself against us, and I am laughed to scorn for thy sake, and reproached. And why dost thou vaunt thy power against us in the mountains? Now therefore, if thou trustest in thine own strength, come down to us into the plain field, and there let us try the matter together. For with me is the power of the cities. All right, so this Apollonius, man, this wicked Apollonius. But so he's saying, look, you up in the mountains over here in Jerusalem. Notice it's mountainous. He said, come down to Jamnia. Come down to Jamnia in the plain where we can have a fair fight. It wouldn't be fair for me to fight you in the mountains. All right, this wicked devil. All right. Power of the cities, ask and learn who I am, and the rest that take our part, and they shall tell thee that thy foot is not able to flight in their own land. All right. Wherefore now thou shalt not be able to abide the horsemen, and so great a power in the plain, whereas neither stone nor flint nor place to flee unto. They said, look, you can't flee. I'm big and I'm bad. I'm this and I'm that. Come and fight me in the plain. Right. So when Jonathan heard these words of Apollonius, he was moved in his mind, and choosing 10,000 men, he went out of Jerusalem, where Simon his brother met him for to help him. And he pitched his tents against Joppa. But they of Joppa shut him out of the city, because Apollonius had a garrison there. So you had Joppa. Joppa's up here in the north. He said, look, I'm going to go to Joppa. But the people of Joppa had turned on Jonathan. Whereof, when Apollonius heard, he took 3,000 horsemen with a great host of footmen, and went to Azotus as one that journeyed, and therewithal drew him forth into the plain, because he had a great number of horsemen in whom he put his trust. All right, so they retreated, right? Because Ashdod is Azotus. That's what Azotus is. It's Ashdod. So they retreated south when they heard that Jonathan was coming, and they camped up in the north of them in Joppa. All right. Then Jonathan followed after him to Azotus, where the armies joined battle. Now Apollonius had left 1,000 horsemen to ambush. And Jonathan knew that there was an ambushment behind him, for they had compassed his host, and cast darts at the people from morning till evening. But the people stood still, as Jonathan had commanded them, and so the enemy's horses were tired. You see that right there? So again, Jonathan, using his knowledge and wisdom, his strategic battle, to overcome the forces. Then brought Simon forth his host, and set them against the footmen, for the horsemen were spent, who were discomfited by him, and fled. You see that right there? So you can't just ride horses all day. The horse is going to get tired after a while. And, you know, Jonathan and Simon made this a battle of attrition with the horses. All right. The horsemen specifically, I should say. And the horsemen also, being scattered in the field, fled to Azotus, and went into Beth Dagon, their idol's temple, for safety. But Jonathan set fire on Azotus and the cities round about it, and took their spoils, and the temple of Dagon with them that were fled into it. He burned with fire, right? Went into an idol temple for sanctuary. Obviously, that didn't do nothing for him, all right? Beth Dagon was also the name of a city, maybe a suburb, I think. Maybe tripping on that, but it's all around this Philistine area, all right? That was their god. Dagon was the Philistine god, all right? Thus, there were burned and slain with the sword well nigh 8,000 men, right? So Jonathan ended up killing 8,000 of Apollonius's men here. And from thence Jonathan removed his host and camped against Ascalon, where the men of the city came forth and met him with great pomp. All right, so this is Ashkelon. Ashkelon's even more south of Ashdod. After this returned Jonathan and his host unto Jerusalem, having any spoils. I think that should be many spoils. Now, when King Alexander heard these things, he honored Jonathan yet more. He said, look, you destroyed my enemy in battle. Hey, I'm going to reward you even more for that. And sent him a buckle of gold, as the use is to be given to such as are of the king's blood. He said, look, we're like family now. All right. He gave him also Acheron with the borders thereof in possession. Now, I don't know what Acheron is. Perhaps it's somewhere up through here. I'm not quite sure what Acheron is. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. Not seeing it. All right. However, he gave him another territory. He gave him some more land. All right. So, with that, because we've already been going for an hour, we're not going to have time to do the next chapter. But here we see how, whereas Judas Maccabeus was the strength of the Lord, Jonathan represents more the knowledge or the wisdom of the Lord and how he moved and his strategy against the enemies. Because that's what Jonathan was really great at, was strategy and politics in a good way. Because we here in America, politics is always just evil and wicked. Because America is evil and wicked, but there is a righteous way to make peace, to make treaties, to make agreements, to make policy, even with people who might be considered your enemy in any other case, right? Obviously, you have to know who is the difference between, the stranger, the Gentiles, and the enemy. It's not always the same, as we see in this case. Alexander was not really an enemy here, all right?